Greetings, everybody. I am Satyam Singh, and I am coming to you live from India. It's a webinar today that we are hosting. We are the ICIP India chapter, and I am from Society for Promotions of Youth and Masses. So today we are here discussing about relapse prevention and what are the best practices that we follow, or perhaps we should follow, while we are counseling our clients. That's what we're going to be talking about today. In case, of course, you have any questions, you may text us those questions in the questions window that might open in your WebEx platform, or maybe you can just go to chat and chat us your questions in case there are any questions that you have in mind. Remember that this is also being broadcast in India as well, so we will be having Hindi-speaking audiences as well. So in case if one of our panelists speaks in Hindi, our other panelists will make sure that they do it, they translate what's being said in English. Today in the panel, we have Shubhangi Taneja with us. She's a counselor. She's been working with us for quite a long time. And then we also have Ms. Tanushree Das. She's also a counselor and she works at a children's center. So I will be taking off for now. In case you have any questions or anything, again, you can just ask those questions and you can chat us up right there. Shubhangi, why don't you take over?
Should I start? Yes, sir. Should I start? Good evening, everybody. My name is Shubhangi Taneja. So today we will be talking about relapse prevention. Now, anybody working in the field of substance use disorders knows that relapse is a very common issue that we face. Most of the times, both the people working in the field as well as the clients think of relapse to be very problematic. However, what they don't realize is that relapse is nothing separate. It is a part of the recovery process. Yet, repeated relapses can lead to negative feelings in both the counselors or the people working in the field as well as the clients. The clients may start feeling that they can never leave drugs after repeated relapses, or that they are not good enough and they don't have the abilities to leave drugs, while the counselors or the psychologists may start feeling irritable or frustrated. So this often happens because we're not adequately prepared to deal with the repeated substance use problem. Also, many times people think that relapses just happen suddenly. We don't know what goes into a relapse. How does it start? How does it progresses? So that is why today we will be talking in detail about the relapse process, what causes a relapse and how we can deal with it and how we can manage it better. So I would request Ms. Tanushree to please explain us the basics of the relapse and the relapse process.
Good evening, everybody, and I'm Tanushree. So, okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm Tanushree. Now coming. So today I am talking about I'm talking relapse, the basics. Addiction is a chronic relapsing conditions, and relapse does not happen suddenly. It is a process, and relapse happen at the thought level process first, and secondly physical act afterwards. And relapse can be prevented. Client need to accept ownership for recovery. Recovery and relapse is here. The relapse process. These are the relapse process, and just like trigger leads to craving leads to lapse, and lapse at last leads to relapse. So it is a trigger, it is a internal or external. It can be trigger internal or external. Internal is a thought process or any type of psychological feelings, and external people, uh, people, place, or any things, just like people, for example, substance user friends, and place, any garden or any parties, and things, a glass in which you used to drink, or any chair that is the memorable. Oh, I'm sitting here, and I used to drink, or any substance, um, uh, nicotine type. And so, Shubhangi, so why do you think some people relapse and some don't?
So this topic has been taken up by many researchers who have done a lot of work on this. So what happens is people often encounter people often enter in a high risk situation. Now, it depends on the kind of coping strategies they use. So, some people use effective coping strategies. They're able to deal with the high risk situation and come out of it without using a substance. So, it leads to increased self efficacy in those people. Their belief that they will be able to manage themselves better in future in those high risk situation increases, and there's a decreased probability of relapse. However, with some people, they're not able to employ effective coping strategies, and they kind of there are positive expectancies of taking the substance. For instance, they feel that they will get a high after they're taking the alcohol or any other drug, and along with poor coping strategies, they lapse. That is, they use substance once. Now, once they use the substance, they have the feelings of guilt and shame in them that they couldn't sustain their recovery, and they've taken the substance. Now, these feelings combined with their poor coping strategies leads to relapse. So basically, they start taking substances repeatedly and they go back to their previous pattern of use. Now, in order to understand how we can prevent relapse or how we can manage relapses, we need to understand what causes the relapse. So, ma'am, what do you think are some of the common reasons for relapsing?
Are uh, so mood status and positive mood, and that is the excessive happiness, which is high chances of taking the drugs in happy mood, and whereas negative mood, that is the sadness or any frustration. So, okay, negative mood, that is the sadness or frustration or any irritation. So, it is also, for example, the client has not submitted any examination. So, after that, or he is failure uh, in his or her examination. So, most chances of for the relapse. And second is behavior. So, impulsive, that is the out of drive. People take decisions without any situations, and poor coping skill, that means he can't cope with different situations. So cognitive, in cognitive, overconfidence is also for the relapsing, too much for high risk situations, uh, faulty cognition, just like extreme thinking or helplessness. And environmental also, we know peer pressure is the most causes for the relapsing, and loneliness or no engagement if the person is free and all the or certain time of free. So loneliness is feeling of loneliness, one can it can make substance use problems also. Lack of social support or constant criticism by the family, that is the also relapse causes. And interpersonal conflicts, some are mother father, and some are brother sister, and physical assaulted to each other in personal conflict, for this. And physiological, that is the craving, people are unable to manage their craving or does not or does relapse. So and chronic physical pain, that is the he feels muscles pain too much, and psychiatric conditions, like anxiety disorder, mood disorder, and psychosis patient. So now I have told you about ये इसके बाद वाला दिया है ना? Okay. So, so what do you think that can be done to prevent such a relapse?
So if we talk about the interventions for relapse prevention, firstly, what we need to understand is that there's no cure for relapse prevention. We need to manage it. There's both psychosocial management that we need to focus on. So there's no permanent cure that if we take this medicine or we do this and this, then a person can never relapse. For instance, we can take example of diabetes. So there's no proper cure. You manage it, you take your medicine, then you're managing your sweet intake and it goes fine. However, you increase your sweet intake, then it's likely to your diabetes levels are likely to go up and you're likely to face problems. Similarly, for the substance use problem, we need to manage it. So first is that we need to do the detoxification, the medical management to deal with the withdrawal and everything. And after that comes our psychosocial management for relapse prevention. Now, the overall goal of the interventions that we use is to teach the client how they anticipate and cope with the possibility of relapse. Now, most of the times during the treatment, people don't talk to the client much about relapse because they think that if they will talk about relapse, they may convey to the client that it is okay to relapse or you are going to relapse. However, that is not the case, and we need to be true to the client about the nature of the disease and that there are chances of relapse so that they're prepared beforehand and they know how to cope with it. So we need to recognize and cope with the high-risk situations that may precipitate a slip, that is a one-time use, and then we need to focus on modifying their cognitions and reactions to prevent a single lapse into turning into a full-blown relapse. So these are the interventions or the techniques that we'll be talking about in detail. So first is identifying and handling high-risk situations. Now, high-risk situations may vary from person to person. So some of the situations may be common. For instance, peer pressure will be there. Substance using places where they used to take substances will be a common high-risk situation for everybody, while some of the situations may not be common. So there might be family conflict for some people that may trigger their thoughts, and that may not be there for somebody else. So we need to focus on the high-risk situations for each client individually as they can vary. Now, we often encourage the clients to self-monitor their behavior while they're in the situations where they used to take substances and elicit what can cause a relapse and what are the high-risk situations. So we usually focus on the 5 W's, that what exactly happened when they were in that situation, where were they, with whom were they, when did it happen, and what made them use it, the thoughts as well as the feelings that were going on. Now, some of the common situations where a person can develop cravings or which can serve as high-risk situations for people can be the site of a bar or the places where they used to take drugs, meeting people with whom they used to take drugs, peer pressure, again, like I mentioned, a very common reason for relapsing of people. Then if they're going to parties where substances are available, they're likely to get cravings and there are higher chances of substance use. Then Saturday night or weekends, probably if someone's microphone. Saturday nights or weekends where they used to take drugs previously might now serve as reminders of taking drugs again, because now if they're not taking drugs and they're not doing anything in that situation, they might start getting thoughts of how they used to take drugs and enjoy their time. So that can also serve as a trigger for some people. Being alone at home or having a lot of unscheduled time can also lead to boredom, and once they're bored and not having anything to do, thoughts of drugs can come back to them. Then family conflict or any other kind of stresses they're facing, be it with friends, be it at job, can also serve as a trigger, because at that times, many a times people do not know how they need to cope with such situations, because till now they were using substances as a way of escaping from those situations. So if they don't know how to deal with these situations, these can turn as a high risk factor for them. And negative and positive emotions, like we just discussed in the precipitants, can serve as a high risk situation. Now, most of the times what we focus on is avoiding these situations as much as possible. However, we all know that avoiding all the situations always is not possible. Thus, we try to link each of the warning signs to a set of recovery activities so that clients know what they need to do in those situations in order to prevent taking substance again. So we focus on the coping skills. Now, coping in order to, as we all know, lapses and relapses occur because of our inability to cope with high-risk situation. Now, coping can be positive or negative. Many a times, people who are taking substances use negative coping. So, if they're encountered with any problematic situation, instead of trying to solve it, they try to escape it and start using substances that may temporarily help them forget the problem. But we need to focus on making them realize that they temporarily might escape from it, but the problem will remain there. So they need to employ positive coping strategies in order to deal with their everyday stressors. So while we're working with the clients on substance use disorder, treatment of substance use disorders and talking about relapses, we need to work on each of these coping skills that are mentioned. So most important skill is the problem solving skills that we need to teach the clients, that if they're encountered with any problem at hand, they need to understand what causes it and then focus on the solutions that they have rather than cribbing about it or thinking that they can't do anything about it. They need to think of all the possible solutions and then focus, evaluate the pros and cons of each and decide which one is best for them. Also, one of the most important things is that teaching them that their solutions, it's not necessary that their solutions will always work. So it's okay if one of the solution doesn't work, try the other one. If that doesn't work, try the third one. Because most of the times, if they're not able to deal with the problems, they get into the thinking that they will not be able to deal with any problem in their life. So we need to prevent them from going into that negative cycle. Then comes anger management. So anybody working in the field would agree with me that anger is the most common issue that people with substance use disorders face. They get angry on things like this. So we need to tackle that issue properly, and we need to help them identify things that make them angry and how they can better manage those situations. Then comes social skills training. So often if people are taking substances for a long period of time, their social relationships are hindered. So we need to teach them from the basics, how they can improve their communication skills, how they can improve their social relations, their decision-making skills. And we need to work on each of these. We need to give time for each of these skills and need to work on them with the client. Also, dealing with negative emotions, drug refusal skills, and stress management. We'll be talking in more details about this further. Then comes cravings. So we all know, no matter how the substance use started, but cravings can be a very strong reason for the continued use of the substance, and it can also interfere in the client's recovery. Now, there are strong memories that are linked to the effect of drug on both our mind and the body. So if a client is getting craving, they'll be feeling very restless, they'll get very irritable, there's constantly thoughts or images of drugs going on their mind. So they're always thinking that somehow I just get the drug, I get the money for using the drug, and I just take the drug. The thoughts are so strong in their mind that they find it extremely, extremely difficult to concentrate on anything. And these are strongly associated with a lapse and eventually a relapse. So we need to work with the clients on how they can deal with these urges or cravings. Now, in order to help the clients deal with it, we first need to make them understand the concept of craving, that cravings are like a waves. They are episodes and they are time limited. So most of the times, clients think that if they're getting a craving, it will not end till the time they take the substance. And to get over the feelings of cravings, they eventually end up taking the drug. However, we need to make them understand that cravings are like a wave. So they will rise, they will reach its peak, and then it will die down after a while, even if you do not take the substance. So that is what we need to emphasize, that after a while it will go if we employ various strategies to keep our mind away from it. So many times people use these 5Ds, which are distract. So if a client is getting craving, we focus on distracting your mind from the cravings and engaging in other things. So different things work for different people to calm them down. So you can listen to a music, you can get yourself involved in some work, you can exercise or go for walk. So we need to discuss with clients things that can help them easily distract their minds from craving and focus on those. Then comes delay. So we usually try to delay cravings for some time. So it may be by a few hours that they focus on one. So we focus on one day at a time, that today I will not take drugs and I'll deal with the craving. So we try to postpone it by a few hours or a day, depending on the limit that the client feels comfortable. Then deep breathing again helps many people calm down and relaxes people. Then discuss. So they can discuss with somebody who supports their recovery. They can share their feelings and how they're getting the cravings. So discussing with somebody helps us provide the support we need at that time. Now, it's also very important to keep in mind to discuss it with somebody who is supportive of their recovery, who prevents them from taking drugs, and not with somebody with whom they used to take drugs. Because if they go and talk to their drug using peers, then again, there are very high chances of relapsing. Then the fifth D is drink water, which again helps people calm down and ends the craving. We also emphasize people to recall the negative consequences of returning to substance use. So all the difficulties that they have faced before. For instance, they might have lost their job, they might have had problems with their family, they would have had lots of stress, those kind of things, so that it creates some fear in the person that if they take drugs again, then they might face these difficulties again. And some amount of fear at times is good for us to prevent us from engaging in many wrong acts. Then comes, like I discussed, one day at a time. Then comes halt. So we need to check for hunger, anger, loneliness, and tiredness, and try to avoid these situations as much as possible, as these are often mistaken for cravings. Then there are stimulus control techniques. So there might be stimuli in your environment that may make you think about the drugs again. So we need to remove all those stimuli. For instance, there might be bottles of alcohol hidden at home or in their office. So we suggest you remove those from your environment so that there's nothing that triggers the craving in you. Also, subtle cues like the chair where they used to sit and have their drink in the evening while listening to music, things like that. If they're there, if there's a whole atmosphere at home that makes them think of the drugs or alcohol or anything, then we need to restructure it so that the client can prevent going into that mood. Now comes the refusal skills. So it is since we all know that peer pressure is again one of the most common reasons for people returning to drugs, we need to help clients learn the refusal skills, and we need to teach them how they need to be assertive and exercise their right to say no. So also because if we talk to the clients generally how they relapsed or how they started taking drugs again, most of the time say that we said no to the person, we said no to our friend, but they insisted and then we gave in. So it's very important to emphasize that the way they're saying a no. So they need to have a strong body language and a confident tone of voice. And these things do not just come just by saying. We need to practice these things with clients. So we can use various techniques. We can use role plays where first the counselor might become the client and the client becomes the friend who insists on taking the drugs. And then we can have a role reversal. We can use modeling, self-instructions, imagery, and other techniques so that the client becomes effective in using these techniques. These are some of the just common drug refusal statements that the client. Okay. Yeah. So some of the common statements that the client can use probably are no thanks and just walk away, give a reason, factor, excuse, change the subject, use humor, cold shoulder, or ignore the point and just leave. So just some of the examples that have been given. Now comes dealing with faulty cognitions. Now, there are a lot of faulty cognitions that can help lead to people returning to substance use. For instance, overconfidence, that they may feel that, you know, nothing can tempt me. I'll go to the party, but I'll not take drugs. I can manage. Or helplessness, that on the contrary, they're like, I cannot manage at all. And they, in the negative feelings, they feel like I will not be able to cope with it. I can't, I know that I cannot release the substance because the effect is so strong in the mind and body that they take the drugs. So we need to tackle these faulty cognitions and we need to work at the thought level of the client. So if we take the example of overconfidence, that a client thinks that I can stay away from drug and nothing can tempt me, then we need to, the result will be that the client will go to the party and will eventually take the drug. So we need to help the client recognize that this is a red flag and I consciously need to tackle it. So there can be several ways that we need to teach the client how they need to work on these thoughts. So, you know, focusing on what proof they have that nothing can tempt them, or what happened last time when they thought of such a thing and when they went to a party and what eventually happened. Also, doing a want and should analysis, that what are the things that are important in their life, what should they do, like they should be working, they should be taking care of their family and things like that, and what are their wants. So they may want to take the substance, but it's going to interfere with the things that they should be doing in their life. So probably changing the wants and taking up activities that focus that are complementary to their shoulds and not against them. So we need to work at their thoughts level and try to modify their challenging thoughts. Again, along with faulty cognitions, there are certain misconceptions that the substance user has. So they often think of the positive effects of the substance, that they're going to experience the high, or the positive effects that they get during the after taking the substance. So we need to tackle these very carefully with the client. We need to encourage them to consider both the immediate as well as the delayed consequences of both continuing and not continuing the substance use. So we kind of use a 2x2 decision matrix where we encourage the client to think of both the short term and the long term benefits as well as the negative consequences of both substance use and not use, to make them realize that the pleasure that they're getting out of it, or the positive expectations that they have, are only short term, while in the long term there are a lot of negative consequences that they may be having. Also, to encourage them and motivate them further, we focus on their reasons for quitting and try to enhance on those. We focus on the progress that they've made till date to encourage them further that they can do it in future as well. And we use several techniques such as imagery and coping cards. Now, since now we've discussed before about how the negative mood states can lead to both how the negative and positive mood states can lead to a relapse, why don't you tell us how we can tackle these?
So it is very important to teach the client how to handle these mood states. So negative mood states uh, like anger, anxiety, and depression, guilt feeling, irritable, and etc. These are associated for the relapse. And a few ways to handle these are, so beware of to help the client and become aware of the self-defeating thoughts. Okay, and realizing the adverse consequences of these negative thoughts, that is the how it will be negative effect and one's mood and eventually their behavior also. For example, I'm not good enough and he is too much depressed. So it is lead to depressed negative feeling, and to it to cope with such feelings. The person will engage to behave uh, negative behaviors such as substance use, these, and they create the opposite. And always be positive thoughts, always should be positive, and challenging negative thoughts should be gone, and accepting oneself as one really is the strength as well as limitation, having realistic self expectations. So abstinence of violence effective, that is the tendency of the client to attribute lapse to their own personal fault, which leads feeling of guilt and shame. It eventually leads to increased substance use to avoid or they escape such negative feelings. For example, that for example, I'm an idiot and I would never change. I will not never and there is try again. Mostly important is prevent the lapse from turning into the relapse. Encourage the first of all when after relapse immediately first if he relapse he lapses, then first encourage the client to seek help immediately. And dealing with AVE, make the client aware of these lapse and relapse, help client to their feelings after lapse, and help also client to challenge his or her thoughts. So what would positive thinking? Yes, positive thinking is the most important in relapse prevention. Okay. Now the enhancing self-efficacy. So this is the self-efficacy, which is the firstly designed to increase the client sense of mastery and being to able to handle difficult situation without any lapsing, and let the client take the responsibility of his or her recovery and become an objective of his or her own behavior, and to teach the clients that changing his habit process first, and break the overall task of behavior change into a smaller. First, we uh, change a behavior in a small task, more than manageable subtask one at a time. For example, making through the day without lapsing, appreciating small success and boost to the confidence of client for bigger tasks. So stress is the it is normal and it inevitable part of the life. Stress is the brain responses to any demanding situations. It is chronic or extreme stress, dangerous to our physical or mental wellness. And stress can be experienced at the personal level and professional level, or a daily hassles. So stress a strong correlation with the irritation, maintenance, and relapse of substance use. So these are the common symptoms of stress. So cognitive symptoms, there are some cognitive symptoms, emotional symptoms, and physical. These are just like pain, nausea, diarrhea, and no interest of any work, and memory problem. So irritable and concentration, poor judgment. So these are behavioral are eating, too much sleeping, or less eating, or less sleeping. So these are the common symptoms of stress and anxiety also. So stress management, how we are manage the stress how we will do stress management. So first of all, relaxation, deep relaxation, yoga, meditation, time management is the also main role of these of stress management. Just like plan in your day in advance, prepare to do what you will be next, and decide important and urgent tasks, managing physical health, exercising, eating behavior, and adequate sleeping is the must, and learning and expressing one's emotion appropriately at the right time to the right person to the right degree also, and reframing the situation, positive self thoughts, problem solving, accepting what is outside our control. So learning the first skill to say and no thank you, that is earlier told to Shubhangi, and now the lifestyle change also.
So we have been getting certain questions. So we've got this question that how can we help teens get back on the healthier and recovery? So I will take this up this question. So often now substance use is becoming very common in teens. Now there are several reasons to it. Now if we need to help the teens, we need to first understand why they're getting into substance use. If we're taking certain substances for a very long period of time, then we need to help them get into a proper treatment procedure, because the physiological effects of the substances. If they start experiencing the withdrawal, then just talking to them won't help. We need to first manage the withdrawal. Once that is done, then we start on the psychosocial management that we just discussed, and we help them understand how the substance use has been affecting their life negatively, what are the difficulties they've been facing because of the substance use, and how we can better manage it. Because in today's time, teens often, it's seen as a very cool thing if they're taking substances, and it's mostly out of peer pressure they start taking it. That they will look very cool, and the age is such that they feel like they're now becoming, they're going to turn into adults, and there's certain things that they can do. We need to help them understand how just trying can actually, the continued use can actually lead to addiction, and how it is very important to stop at the level. So it's a very complicated process, and if they've been taking it for a long time, then we need to get into the treatment procedure.
Can you hear me?
I hope everybody can hear me. Please mention in the comments if you can't.
Other question is, how can yoga and meditation help in substance? 1 minute answers and get away. How
Okay.
can yoga and meditation?
Why don't you ask the question and then I answer? No. Okay. Am I audible?
I'll go. Question. कितना बचा है?
3-4 slides.
खत्म करो then I'll. Go ahead.
Start.
ये यहाँ से हटाओ तो okay. So balanced lifestyle recovery is not just abstinence, and focusing on wellness, improving the overall quality of life is essential for the substance recovery. So attitude is the key. Be positive all the time. Be positive. Have a fixed schedule for the day. Begins to end your day with prayer and all. And believe you, trust yourself, master. Because without a trust, you can't do anything, and that you will be get through treatment or a hurdles, big or small. Plan your time effectively and pursue your hobby, something you have always wanted to do. Take time for a recreation, go outside, practice relaxation techniques, sama yoga and meditation also. Be regular to go to job or work. Cultivate a best friend. Make a best friend whom you can really trust. Okay, and stay away from negative people or constant criticism. Leave them and spend time with family and children. Take a healthy balanced diet and follow a regular fitness or gym also. Get sufficient sleep. Now the role of family in relapse prevention, how it is possible. So family role is an important role in preventing relapse and helping the person remain the drug free. So work with the family members on the following areas. Realize that drug dependency is a disease. It is it's not a normal weakness or a lack of willpower. Do not argue and quarrel to each other in home or in outside, or take up the responsibility of covering up for the consequences of substance use. Provide emotional support to them and reduce interpersonal conflict and stress to help the person in dealing with everyday stressors. Pay extra attention to his needs like nutrition and medications, health. Identify the unhealthy pattern in the family. Encourage the family members to take care of their own health and as well as him. So the regular follow-ups and aftercare. Relapse prevention is described at the beginning is the process and to ongoing. Follow-ups are the essential part of relapse prevention. So he or she is handling the urge, any physical or emotional disturbance, stoppage of substance, way in which the recover person is managing time, job, family, and any high risk situation he or she faced recently and how they have coped. How are they dealing with the triggers or relapse cues? Aftercare services, the therapist can ask appropriate questions to understand both the recovery and the relapse. So, self-help groups, AA and that is the AA and and NA. So group recovery, groups of recovery person designed to give client alternative social support network. Goal is to promote abstinence through lifestyle change and peer support. Use the term fellowship to indicate that they offer client to sense of belonging and community that they may not have experienced outside the substance use community. These meetings frequently discuss relapse issues also. Members are encouraged to remain abstinent one day at the time to hurdle cravings or using not to act on today. Counselors should encourage client to attend these meetings because it is the most important for the client. Hmm? You again.
Okay. So, just to summarize, lapses and relapses are an integral part of the recovery, and in fact, they provide an opportunity to strengthen the client's existing skills and teach new ones. So, just to summarize the overall process, we need to identify the high-risk situations. We need to avoid or deal with it as much as we can. We need to make certain lifestyle changes in the client so that we can focus on improving the overall quality of life, which is essential for a sustained recovery. And in case a lapse or a relapse happens, then we should encourage the client to seek help immediately. Okay, so this is just a quote that I have read somewhere, which says that forewarned is forearmed, and an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So we should focus as much as we can on preventing, anticipating, and preventing relapses and work towards it. And even if relapses happen, we should not lose hope, as it is a part of the recovery process, and work towards it. So now I would like to have Satyabhan to handle the questions on board.
Hello, everybody. Hi. So first, few things first. I guess there was some problem in the middle about the audio and the video, probably. So thank you for sticking to us during that time. We were constantly juggling the audio and the video aspect. This is new for us. So thank you for that patience. And now we have questions coming in. So we have a lot of questions, and a lot of them have asked us to send their PPTs, send this PPT to them. Surely would love. Oh, there you go. This happens every time. Now I am audible? Perfect. So I would like to say thank you for everybody for sticking with us during the obvious sound problems out there. And thank you for everything. Now we will take some questions out there. But before that, many of you have asked us to send you all the PPT. We would love to share the PPT if you will just put in an email to us at communication@spym.org. Again, communication, COMMUNICATION at spym.org, and we would love to share the PPT with you all. Now coming to the questions. So let me just browse the list of questions that we have, and we will take the questions forward. All right. One of the questions is please also explain regarding transgender community as well. Ms. Chaudhary, thank you so much for this question. However, if we get into the problems with the transgender community in drug abuse, that's a whole another webinar. We would love to take it in the coming time, and we will definitely share the link with you. One of the question is, do I need to return to treatment if I have relapsed? This question has been asked us by Mr. Rahman.
So it depends on the level, the severity of substance use. But yes, we would recommend that if the client has returned to the previous pattern of use, it is recommended that they return to the treatment, and we can work on various areas. Like I mentioned, that if they're coming back to the treatment, it helps enhancing the skills that the client already knows. So the client comes back and we work further on those skills and the issues that the client has been facing, so that we can avoid those in future.
All right. Second question is by Dr. Varsha. She has written in to ask, how can yoga and meditation help in substance relapse?
So as we all know, yoga and meditation helps us calm our mind and body down. So a regular yoga and meditation actually helps us in dealing with the cravings, and it also helps us deal with the negative emotions that we've been facing, such as stress, anger. So it helps us deal with certain situations and remaining calm.
All right. As to family support, what can you suggest in dealing with family who gave up on a relapsing patient to the point that they wanted him to be put back in jail due to his chronic use? And maybe you can also talk about the halfway home experience that we had here at SMI. Okay, so you can talk about the question. I'll respond to the halfway home that we have.
Family counseling is an essential part of the treatment process. From the beginning, we try to involve the family as much as possible. Now, most of the times, families are not able to support the client because they do not understand the nature of the disease. So it's very important to help them understand what is substance use disorder, what is happening to the client during the time he's taking substances, and why it is difficult for the client to leave drugs. Most of the times, families, because they have, if you see the families, the communication in the family, there are a lot of negative patterns. They're not able to understand why the client is behaving the way he is, and they think, the client is throwing tantrums and is not ready to listen to them. So it's very important to make them understand that all the behavior that the client is doing is because of the substance use problem, and it's not that easy to leave drugs because of their obvious physiological and psychological effects. All working on this, and then teaching them how they need to support the client, how they need to work with the client in order to deal with such issues.
Yes, so the question, however, is that what if the patient's family are not ready to accept the person? Then what's the solution? What can we do? I think there the role comes of the entire community. In India, in Delhi, we have this another center that is it's a facility. It's called Halfway Home. So if there are children, if there are patients who cannot go back to their families because their families are not supporting, or if there are families, who are giving the same kind of drug using enabling environment, in that case, we have this facility called Halfway Home where these people can stay, they can be given the treatment, they can carry on with their recovery and lead a healthy life. And once they find enough support, so that they can sustain themselves, then they leave that facility. So I think in such cases, it's the community that has to play the larger role, because at the end, these people are also part of the larger community itself. So So community has to play a larger role in that aspect. All right. So how do we make them understand? As one of my friends attempted suicide, we never thought he would take that step after coming out of relapse rehabilitation center. How do we help those who don't speak or share their feelings with anyone? Because I guess I'm assuming it's been talking about after the recovery has happened and after the recovery. How will you cater to people who are suicidal and want to commit suicide?
If a client is having suicidal tendencies, then this is not something that you can manage at your personal level. Even if the person has come out of the treatment and you see certain changes in the person, like you mentioned that the client is not talking much, stays aloof, and is trying to harm himself or herself, then you should consult the counselor or a psychologist so that they can help identify the problem that the client is facing and work further on it.
All right. Another question is, some of the illiterate people are so reluctant to give up their addiction. What should be the initial step?
the role, see, initially people have a very less motivation. They don't have any motivation for going to the treatment or leaving the drugs. So we need to work on the motivation. Now, if we take up how we need to increase the motivation, then there's a lot of theory and it's a large thing. So we can focus on it further. But our first step is to enhance the client's motivation as much as possible by making them focus on all the difficulties that they've been facing because of the substance use, and highlighting how the pleasurable effects that they're getting are only short term, and in the long run they can have many difficulties.
All right. So Iram Khalid has sent us a feedback saying management should be in detail. It's like reading slides only. We thank you for this feedback. For the next webinars, as I told you that this is one of the very first webinars that we are doing. So right now it might seem as such, but thank you again for the feedback. Of course, after this webinar, we'll be more prepared, you know. So thank you, Iram. Thank you for joining us. All right, except NA and AA, do we have any other support groups? If yes, please explain more about it. This question has been asked by Latifa Ahmadi.
So mostly there are AA and NA. Now there are for narcotics, there are different groups for different substances, which you can find. There's a whole link on the internet which you can find different groups. Also there are self-help groups for the families of person who are into addiction. So there are few groups for those. So they where they discuss about the common issues that they're facing in families. So it's given on the website. We can share the links with you, and you can access the whole groups that have been working in different areas.
So we have one, it's an appreciation, I would pass on to that. So one of the, Iram again has asked this, please define lapse and relapse. Lapse and relapse.
Okay, so lapse is what we call a brief one-time use. So after the treatment or after the client has stopped using a substance and they take, for instance, alcohol. So if they take alcohol once after some period of recovery, that's a lapse. Now after that, after a while, they start taking alcohol again, and they go into the repeated pattern of use that they're again taking it every day, and they're facing the same difficulties that we used to face earlier. That is a relapse. So relapse is just a brief one-time use, while relapse is the repetitive pattern of use that they used to experience earlier.
All right. So I think we have picked up the question. Let me check what else. Does one drink count as a relapse? I'm sure this is a question I think you get across, and everybody asks this question. So yeah, does one drink after the recovery, I'm assuming because the word relapse has been used. So does one drink after the recovery is count as a relapse?
You know, you may say that one drink won't harm anybody, but while working in the field would agree with me that one drink rarely stops at one. And even if at that point they're not taking again, after a while they will take again, and eventually it will lead to a relapse. The very high chances that it will lead to a relapse. So yes, a single drink also comes under lapse.
All right. I think we do have some more questions. Okay, this is the last question that we guys are taking. Since it's been said that lapse is part of the cycle in recovering from the substance use, what if clients use it as an excuse to justify it after some time?
See, again, we need to work with the client in the kinds of effects that it is having on their life, because as we say, relapse is a part of recovery. Yet our focus always is, and our goal is to focus on sustained recovery and avoid the relapses as much as possible. So we need to focus on the long-term management, and if that issue is coming, then we need to work with the client and help them understand that that this issue is coming from their side, and we need to understand the reasons behind and work towards those.
Perfect. That was the last question. This was the webinar that we conducted on relapse prevention. I am Satyabhan Singh. We have Shubhangi and we have Tanushree ma'am. And she's a clinical psychologist, not a counselor, as I said before. All right. So for everybody who needs the presentation, I've been getting a lot of requests for people who want the presentation. Again, it will be difficult for us to track all of you down. It will be really appreciating if you guys can just write into us at communication@sbym.org. Olivia, thank you for Olivia as well. She's from ISIP Global, and she's been helping us do this entire setup for all of us here. So Olivia has also written to you in the chat, communication@sbym.org. You can reach out to us there and we will send you the presentation for sure. And to those from India who have joined us and who have not subscribed to ISIP, they can go and apply to be a participant with ISIP India and ISIP Global at large. You will be having a lot of these webinars, a lot of these informative material that is out there. And of course, we will also share the link with you guys. So thank you so much for joining us. And it was a pleasure interacting with you. It was a pleasure for us also talking about an issue that is so much important to all of us, especially who've been working in the substance use disorder community by large. So thank you so much again.